Now that you've clearly identified your course destination, it makes sense that you map out how your students will actually get there. You'll want to lead your students on a journey. You'll take them down a path to a destination that joins to another path and another, and so on, all the way to their final destination. If the journey is long, then you might group the paths logically so you can focus on completing only one part of the journey at a time. In your course, each module will take your students down one path, and you can group these modules logically together into sections. This will form a map of their journey called a course outline. I find the best way to create a course outline is to start big and then go small. So let's start with the logical sections. Now, my course learning objective and destination was to create stunning portrait paintings on your iPad. So I need to think about what makes sense as the section objectives to get there. First, I'd want to teach my students to be able to use an iPad to paint, then to be able to paint the head. And finally, I want the portraits to be stunning. So I want them to be able to take their portraits to the next level. Each section builds on each other and they are logically separate. Once the sections are in place, you can work out the modules within them that's needed to meet your section objective. I think in most cases, a good module only has one concept. That way, you can create very clear learning objectives for each module. This will also make it easier for your students to consume and refer to later if they need. Let's look at the section where I want my students to be able to paint the head and work out the modules. I'm thinking to paint the head, it would be good to understand the structure of the head and then the parts. So the modules might be understanding the proportions of the head, then painting the eyes, then painting the ears, painting the skin, and then painting the hair. And a final module in the section called Painting Your First Portrait, where they get to put it all together. Play around and think through the order of the modules so the journey makes sense. You don't always need to build up in complexity. For example, I may want my students to paint their first portrait in the first module to help them identify issues. Then loop back around and paint another portrait at the end of the section so that they can see the improvements. Also, another advantage of breaking down your sections into modules with just one concept is it makes it easier to edit, such as reorder and add to. So if I need to add a module called Painting Your Lips later, then I can easily slot that in. Once you have all the modules down and grouped into sections, it's good to wrap it all up in an intro and outro section to tie it all together. The introduction section is where you want to have a module to introduce yourself, thank your students for starting the course, and outline at a high level what's coming up. You may even want an extra module in there to further add context setting. The outro section, you want to add a summary to wrap up the course, talk about next steps, and thank your students for participating. You may also like to apply this intro and outro shell to sections so you can outline what is coming up at the beginning and tie it all together at the end of each section. Creating a course outline is kind of like doing a jigsaw. You might find as you put the pieces down, you have put one in the wrong spot and you have to move it. Or you have some gaps and you need to work out what pieces you need to fill it. It's also a good idea to step back and make sure all the pieces work together to create a complete picture. You only want the pieces that you need, no more, no less. If you find that your course is too big, then reconsider your course learning objective. You may not be specific enough, or maybe you'd be better serving your audience if you split your course into more achievable courses, such as a beginner and intermediate course. Just like naming your course, you may want to add some feeling and sense of story when you name your sections and modules. Your audience will be able to see your course outline before they sign up, and they'll want to feel like you're taking them on a journey. Once you have created your course outline, it's time to stop and validate and refine this with some of your audience. You can even pre-sell your course at this stage by only sharing the course outline. That way, you don't do the hard work of building your course unless you get enough interest. You may even initially only want to work on a section of your course that can stand alone. You can give this away as a taster course in exchange for a highly targeted audience email list, which you can then use to sell your full course to. Having a solid course outline will ensure that you can take your students on a journey down the best paths to meet their learning needs.